Let's start with the New York Times. I mean, where do we go with all of this?
Well, the New York Times is desperate, but Robert Mueller must really be desperate if he thinks that scolding the Attorney General over his wrongful recusal is somehow obstruction of justice. Under the law, obstruction requires a corrupt purpose, and as Victoria pointed out, a lie, threat, bribe, destruction of evidence, or altering of documents. Scolding your AG because he was dumb in relying on the wrong regulation in his recusal,
as Gregg has pointed out for months and months now.
Is not obstruction of justice. And so, this just underscores what a colossal waste of taxpayer money Mueller has caused us.
But as I asked Victoria, let me ask you this. I mean, we now know many of the facts that are fundamental to the special counsel appointment. We know, for example, Rod Rosenstein. There is no question about his conflict, the series of conflicts, profound and disqualifying conflicts that he had,
right,
whether it pertains to Mueller, whether it pertains to the very idea of being a special counsel. The country understands the corruption, the abject, profound corruption of the Department of Justice leadership and that of the FBI. The 5 top officials in the FBI are gone. Why do we persist in this? Why are we in the media supposed to pretend, even though we certainly do not, but anyone in this media pretend that this is just a perfectly rational process in history in which the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, is being persecuted by the deep state and the Democratic Party?
Americans now are beginning to realize that the president is the victim, not the villain here, that there was never any evidence of a crime to justify a criminal investigation, no legitimate intelligence to justify a counterintelligence investigation. And Americans are turning against Robert Mueller and James Comey. The latest CBS poll found a majority of Americans believe this investigation is politically motivated, and Americans are right. It is.
No question about it. Let's turn to Jeff Sessions, the president today saying point blank, and this is one of the many things that we love the president for. I mean, he just said straightforwardly, I don't care what you call it. I wish I'd chosen a different man to be, or woman, to be the Attorney General of the United States. And certainly, my gosh, when you look at what Jeff Sessions has done and the way in which he's gone about it, anyone in their right mind would say, what have I done here?
Yeah.
Watching him perform.
Yeah, I've called him
not perform.
A feckless Attorney General, and that's a generous assessment of his skills. He has no skills. The president is rightfully angry because Jeff Sessions, while he was standing there taking the oath of office, knew that he would be recusing himself. He testified before Congress that the very next morning he met with officials at the Department of Justice to put in motion his recusal. And again, he relied on the wrong regulation in the recusal. But he betrayed the president. He wasn't honest with the president about that. He should have told President Trump, here's what I'm thinking about doing. And the president said, hold on a minute. This is an important investigation. You need to be in control of it. Let's look at the law. And they would have concluded, oh, I don't have to recuse myself in a counterintelligence probe, only in a criminal case. And it was then not a criminal case. So, this was a severe and serious betrayal of the President of the United States. No wonder he is angry. I'd be doubly angry.
Yeah, it's this president is measured. He's shown patience of an extraordinary degree, and he still is assailed from 360 degrees from every quarter in this country, even though he has a rising approval rating and a base that is so understated by the national left-wing media that it's absurd. But this is really cold comfort because we are watching a president who could do so much if unfettered by these little left-wing, deep state gnomes who inhabit much of Washington.
The Democrats, I think, are running scared about this Mueller probe. They're beginning to realize the boomerang effect that it will have in the midterm elections if it persists. Yeah. And thus you had Senator Warner saying it needs to end this year. No kidding, Senator.
Yeah, isn't that a clever thing he did?
Yeah.
He's just got to be just cackling to himself at the old boys school lounge right now as he's suggested it could wrap up sometime this year. This is the man who, well,
yes.
Anyway, I'm more upset with Richard Burr, frankly, for turning over the Senate Intelligence
They're
Committee.
two peas in a pod, aren't they?
Yeah, well, pea, as you would say, is a nice word for what they are. Gregg Jarrett, who only uses nice words, let me assure you. Thanks for being here.
Lou.
Appreciate it.